Hello everybody, I'm Nathan and I'm here with Tomasz. He's the executive producer for Lords of the Fallen, which he has just shown us here in this lovely cinema at the Soho Hotel. Now Tomasz, my first question, this is a new IP, you have invented a new lore for this game. The hero character, he doesn't seem like a very nice guy.
He isn't indeed.
So can you tell us a bit about why he has been, how he has become the hero, even though he looks frankly like an unpleasant person?
In a lot of stories, there's a situation where a lot of coincidence lead to a certain person becoming a middle of certain turmoil. And it's no different in that case. But just a very quick few words about the introduction to the lore of Lords of the Fallen itself. There's a legend that we've built everything upon in the world and in Lords of the Fallen. A couple thousand years ago, people had to fight and defeat their god and his demonic army as well. It's a fantasy world, and they actually entrapped the god under the ground. He tried to break free as a last desperate move. He stuck his hand through. Anyways, since then, because of what humanity has achieved, they believe that they can wipe evil completely out of human nature. Whether this is reasonable or not, I'm not gonna...
I love this, but it's made them fanatical, hasn't it? That's
Pretty much, but what is important is that once you assume that, it's important to assume that, and then you will understand a lot of things that actually happen in the world of Lords of the Fallen and what drove people to do certain things. For example, they came up with a codex of the worst things that people can do. Let's say capital sins, or however we called it, and anybody who gets caught doing anything from that list gets a tattoo on the face so that the whole world knows this is an outcast. You don't want to stick with this guy. So these are the bad people. These are the outcasts. And then when the game starts, the army of the dead gods starts to reappear. Of course, nobody knows why, but it's only natural for the humanity, as I've described them, to think, hey, maybe we just want to face evil with evil. So what they try to do is they seek out for the guy who's committed the worst sins out there, the most of them. That's our hero. That's Harkin.
I like it. It's like the dirty dozen of, kick-ass RPG fantasy. Well, yeah, the dirty one guy. And what's his name?
Harkin. That's Harkyn, actually.
And so you're always, so this is an action RPG, and there's obviously character creation and customization, but you are always this hero.
Character customization in Lords of the Fallen actually boils down to you being able to change the gear that you wear. You're not physically changing the face of the hero, his body, his statue. You're not doing that because we really wanted to make sure that this is a story about him, and there are certain in our opinion, it's about credibility. There are certain features of his posture, for example, that really want to make people believe that it would actually physically be possible for him to learn how to use all these weapons, to bear even the heaviest swords and stuff like this. So we actually went with him looking exactly the way he looks. And if you want to customize, a lot of threats that you can change, but always Harkin.
I wanted to ask about that. So at the beginning, when you start off, is there a class system when you go into it? So you make some early choices. Can you talk to us about that?
Of course, we wanted to make that choice at the beginning meaningful. So there's something that you lock down at the beginning of the game because of the class that you choose, but at the same time, we didn't want people to lock down too much so they feel like they've missed something. It's a hard balance to strike, but what we did is, out of 3 pillars of character development in Lords of the Fallen, being one of them spells and magic, and the other one being attributes, stats of your character, and the third one being gear that you can freely customize, only one is bound to the class. So when you choose either warrior, rogue, or cleric at the beginning of the game, you choose pretty much the spell tree of your class. Then you can change gear, you can change your attributes however you want it. This is totally class independent. So that's pretty much how we split it.
And it seemed for me, just you were whizzing through the menus. Obviously you've become very comfortable with the game, but even in the short section that we saw, you were picking up bits of armor and you were using a ton of magic, and then you used some of your XP to level up various parts of your character. So I guess there is, once you get started and you start collecting XP and different bits of gear, there's a ton of variation in the way that you can craft your character.
I think this is the strongest and most complex part of this game by far, and by conscious design decision, because we could not make everything in this game extremely complex and tactical, but because we tried to laser focus on something that was combat and character development, and that's why you can actually experiment a lot with it, because I just mentioned 3 pillars. Spells can be unlocked and upgraded, and their gameplay effects change when you do that. Attributes, different weapons scales with different attributes, and that means you have to wisely choose what you want to scale with. Gear, armors, shields, or weapons, some of them can be craftable. You can craft on some of them have perks, so there really is a lot, and you might be able to learn it throughout the whole game. It's you that is in control of the pace, how you learn the thing. You don't have to learn that all if you don't want to, but there will always be hints, and there will always be new things that you might want to explore and see. Changing the armor means that I just got, for example, this armor boosts my two-handing of the weapons. The other armor will boost the jump attack, stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. And when you talk about pace, we went through an area, I'm not sure it'll be what we're showing on screen at the moment, but yeah, the area that you just showed us is called the catacombs, is that right?
I think we can show parts of the boss fight.
Excellent. And leading up to that, you were explaining that's an area you can visit earlier in the game, but you probably won't be ready.
I don't want to cheat anybody. This is a sandbox, open world kind of game.
Yeah.
No, we're not trying to publicly say that. But that being said, this is a game that actually allows you for certain degree of non-linearity in its exploration. And what I mean by that is, for example, the catacombs level that we were showing you today, it is accessible quite early on in the game. It depends on the skill of the player, how quickly you can get to the very first entrance, the catacombs. But for very, very skilled players, maybe even within an hour, they can actually get there, but it's going to be quite challenging at the beginning, because it only becomes obligatory around the middle of the game, around half of the game, where you actually have to fight through that area and defeat a champion, the final boss of the catacombs, to be able to move the story forward. So that is actually configurable to a certain degree.
So can we give people kind of an idea? We're not looking at an open world, but you're looking at kind of how often are there going to be split paths, and there's going to be one which is kind of more advanced. Does that come up a lot in the game, or is this more of a rarity?
There are 3 major worlds in Lords of the Fallen, and the way we structure that is that the path, the journey of the main character is going to be the way that you start off in the human realm. Once you sort of think you get around it quite well, you venture off into a demonic realm, and you get a totally different perspective. So when you get back, it's not the whole world to you. You look at it totally differently. And then, after knowing the both sides, you're ready to venture to the third part, which is under the ground, where they entrap the dead god. You try to explore that part. Maybe even at the end, face the dead god. Anyways, what is important is that each of these 3 worlds will feature one or more these alternative or extra parts that you can unlock earlier on if you want to.
Got it. Cool. Understood. And so I saw you playing, and there was an element of you definitely trying to show different ways that you could play the game, and you're showing different parts of the game.
It's so important that I just would prefer to show more weapons, even if that sort of makes me less show off during combat. I don't like doing that. I think it's so important that it's important to stress.
But at the same time, I think you died sometimes because the game's hard, right? I mean,
I would say challenging,
right?
Because hard probably imposes some of the punishment in it, and I don't believe this game will feature punishment.
Okay, and that is, I think that's, one of the big parallels that one of the big comparisons people are drawing between this and Dark Souls.
Oh, yeah.
And I heard you talking earlier on just about the kind of differences. You don't want your game to be punishing for no reason. You want it to be a challenge. Can you explain?
I'm not saying, just note, just for the record, I'm not saying that Dark Souls is punishing, but I do understand that for a lot of people it was just a bit too much. It was over the top, and I understand why some people threw control out the window within the first hour of the game. That is understandable to me still. I think it was actually quite an important and huge part of our development to try to identify and sort of extract the things from the design of this game that are less on the challenging part and more on the punishing part, rather than the other way around, which we focus on. And just to give you a example, there's going to be a lot more, but just to give you a few examples of them. For example, we're not going to feature a lot of environmental deaths in Lords of the Fallen. We just said, okay, maybe this is not exactly what we want to make prominent in our game. And apart from that, this game feels a little bit more, how to say this, arcade-ish. You can
Right.
always break your attack if you want to and start
Okay.
blocking. I think it's technically called pre-hit cancel. Still,
Right, yeah,
we
yeah.
feature things like that.
Because when you say arcadey, and when I was seeing you do the combat, the hero looked very nimble. And is
Mhm.
that a system? It looks like quite a quick system with a lot of kind of
Mhm.
nip and thrust. Is that right?
I think there's a lot of scaling and the ways that you can move and fight in terms of, I deliberately chose, at least for the most important part of this presentation, which was the boss fight, I chose the fastest moveset that you can get, and I actually chose the fist weapons, which are even faster than swords, for example, so that I could actually show you how fast you can get, because the boss that I was fighting with, he doesn't have any long weapons, so there's not a lot of long swinging of the weapons, so I definitely wanted to make sure that I can get in and get out very, very fast, and because of that, I believe that it's fair to say that looked like a very, very fast-paced combat, maybe even more arcade-ish than a lot of tactical games, but at the same time, if you use heavier gear, it will look and feel a bit more slower, but there are different tactics for that. For example, if you use fast weapons, you can perfect time the attacks to trigger special combos and special animation, but if you use slow weapons, you can charge your attacks, and that gives extra damage, just in a little bit different way.
Awesome. I can't wait to try it out, man. Can you tell us, PlayStation 4 is 2014. Do you have a window of release that we can expect the game?
That fall, autumn is all that I can say at the
Magic.
moment.
So we should be playing it before Christmas.
Definitely.
That's the important thing. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. Guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for all your videos on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita.